Well, from the last video you got the impression I wasn't pleased with working on a particular brand saw. That is correct. It's not that they're a bad saw, there's nothing wrong with the design. The people who build Echo in Japan have been building really fine chainsaws for a very long time. And sometimes you see them in the Echo brand, but you've also seen them under the John Deere brand. And a lot of history there, and I'm a little surprised that you don't see that in the collector community, because they're certainly worth that. But my problem with them is you just can't get parts. The only source of parts is like online. So this one right here has a split intake boot, quite radically split. I showed that in the last video, and I can't do anything with it, so it goes into the box. Now that's the definition of hell, because what happens is once it goes into the box, you know, you kind of lose your momentum, you lose your train of thought. So I ordered a boot online, and the estimated time of arrival is January 5th. You know, that's like a millennium for me. Policy for Hilltop Saw Shop is no Echoes. None. Unless it's a hobby saw for me personally. And that is the only way that I would get into working on one of those again. Now, having said that, I do have a John Deere, which was made by Echo, and I'm eventually going to get into that because I like that saw. It has some history with me with a friend who's now not with us, but in his memory and honor, I'm definitely going to take that saw and make it run right. These two saws right here, they may be of interest to somebody. They both came in last summer, and both of them were videos in one point in their life. And the common denominator between these two saws is they both have Chinese components. One of them has been around for a very long time and definitely beat the odds. And the other one, I don't know what to really say about it other than that it definitely earned its keep while it ran. This one here is the G372XT that I put out to a logger and let them run it until it died. And pretty much true to form, it ran really strong right until it didn't. And you can go back in my videos to see what the history was, but I had a hard time getting that saw to run right when it came out of the box as the XT, to the point where I recommended against them. And it always had this smell like rubber or something like that, like something was burning. When I finally got sick of it and tore it apart, I realized that the gaskets were like a rubbery bubblegum type material. They just simply weren't an effective material. And I had subbed in an ignition system, and eventually subbed in an OEM handle because I couldn't stand the handle, and an OEM handle bar. So both the tank handle is OEM and the bar is OEM, and I had a late model 372X Torque ignition, the one that starts firing at around 700 RPMs. Damn thing turned into a screaming saw. The guy who ran it loved it. So the performance side of that saw was an absolute win. Well, he ran it in production as a felon saw for, I guess 6 or 7 months, and it came back with a rattle, and the rod bearing's gone. You could probably hear it. And so I just said, okay, fine. It's now a part saw. I got some good parts on that thing to take off. One thing is that the aftermarket copy of the X-Torque carburetor worked good. That was a good running saw when I had it finally right. It was a good running saw. And doing the modifications I do to a X-Torque top end worked on the aftermarket one as well. Definitely a strong saw. And I did things like gut the intake, but notice how I cut the fins there. Do that on the X-Torques as well, so the ignition wire doesn't wear and short out in the fins. All those things I had done to the saw. And for the time it ran, like I said, it certainly earned its keep. And so I guess the point on these is, if you're a hobby type, it'd probably take you 15 or 20 years to put as much time on your hot rod saw had you built one like this as this guy did, and to say the 6 or 7 months. And you just do the math. The guy ran it, you know, 6 or 7 hours a day, 6 days a week, you know, and that just piles right up. And most people are going to run it for an hour or two, you know, maybe for a week, you know what I'm saying? They might have 10 or 12 hours on a month. So in order to get the kind of time that caused this catastrophic failure, most people in the hobby, or most people, I want to call it in the sport of building these Chinese saws, would never see that failure. You know, I don't know if that's an endorsement. It's just a reality. I did a video years back about Pharmatech parts, and I'd say now, years later, my opinion has not changed. To learn how to play with saws, to do puzzles, firewood, occasional use, there's nothing wrong with those things. I mean, the politics of it, that's a different story. People can get all into that. But in terms of a tool, I don't see a problem with building these things and having fun with them. You know, I'm not going to begrudge a person doing that. I'm not going to begrudge the people selling the parts either. You know, they're trying to get through life just like you and me. And I've had success in the sense I've made them run strong. On the G372XT I actually had success in making them run strong for long enough to actually earn their keep. So this is the Hot Rod G372XT. This is how it ended up. It's now a part saw. This is an OEM actual 371, not even a 372. And what I can tell you on this is that the bottom end is still solid, right? All the argument about bearings and all that. Bottom end of this saw, I almost guarantee you I can put a top end on this thing, new carb kit, stuff like that, blinds, it'll be running and it'll seal up. I might pop seals into it, but I won't need to replace the bearings, okay? So this is a legitimate option. There's a lot of this stuff out here as the 372 kind of goes into obsolescence, the original editions. Finding something like this for $100 and then building it into a legitimate saw, in my mind, you know, if you have the skills, gets you the same place as doing what I did with this Chinese saw. And the difference is, if you start out with this, stick with OEM, you actually have an OEM version, which is ostensibly a higher quality and will last a longer period of time. Now this saw right here, this is Cyclops. This is one of my first attempts to put a big bore 372 style kit on a saw, right? The bottom end is from a 2012 372X torque, and the guy thought he had bearing problems. He didn't. He had a blown out base gasket stock, and I ended up at the bottom end. I put the Huztl then, which is no longer Huztl. They're a Pharmatech or Huztl or a John Cutter, but they're not Huztl. The 52mm top end on it with no base gasket, and one of my original brass muffler jobs. I did this quite a while back. I ran this saw for a long time, tried to keep it clean, eventually got dirty. And what failed on this, let me go get it. What failed on Cyclops was the aftermarket pull start. This was probably one of my first junk pile saws, I think, because like I said, it had a OEM tank handle, because I got rid of that piece of crap square plastic one that I had put on there originally. Still has the aftermarket handle. We're going to change that out. That's OEM, OEM, OEM. Pull start is going to be OEM, and I believe the ignition is medium ignition. Now remember, this saw here is Cyclops many years later. And it's been used heavily by me. And then a guy used it to clear cut 15 acres. And it sat for a little bit. Nice hot spark. That's good. Let's see what we have for compression. Oh, jeez. Jeez. Well, I can't pull it anymore. And it's sitting up around 165, 170. So compression is not the saw's problem, but I think it does need a compression release. Blow my freaking heart out just pulling that stupid saw over. It's one of the reasons I got rid of it. Because I can no longer do it. I'm going to put a compression release in it. Needless to say, it's got stupid compression. I got it to 165, actually like 170, but I couldn't pull it over anymore, and that's pretty much common. I'm going to guess that saw probably sits around 190 if I could actually turn it over. See, I can remember being all big and bad and thinking that having a compression release was the definition of lose. You got to be a wuss, you know? Well, I'm here to tell you that's not necessarily the case. Alright. See if I can pull it over now. Well, we're standing in the middle of a stand of ash, of all things. You can see a few out that way. Most of them are pretty good size, but that's probably a 20-inch tree right there. And if you look out in that direction, you see some that are probably close to 28 inches. They're big old trees. I don't know if they're standing dead. Are they good wood? You know, don't know. I've seen a couple down in here. They look like they're good trees, like that one right there. And then a little bit further down, I see a couple more that might be standing dead. But you know, how do you know until you take them down? There's a beautiful one right there. Got a lean to it, but that's a big tree right there. So while I can, this is way down to the very western edge of my place. You can see a couple right there. Just all down through there is ash trees. A couple really nice ones over here. The one right in front of me, I think it's a standing dead, but the ones over here are not. A couple quite large ones right there. There's a dead poplar in front of one, and as you can tell, there's not a lot of soil here. Really what you have is this mishmash mud stuff, but only a few inches down, like maybe a foot down, you have hard pan, which is why I can get in and out of here with the tractor. As long as I get to the yellow stuff, I'm going to be moving. Yeah. There's an ash tree right there, next to that dead tree. I'm going to take that one. And there's one right there. A couple more down in there. I counted roughly 50 of them when I came down here and started trying to catalog what we had, and I don't know how good they are, but we're going to take them. There's one right there. The chainsaw I want to use today is this one right here, and this is old Cyclops. One of my first ventures into aftermarket parts and stuff, and I was trying to figure out what worked for aftermarket cylinders, and I'd gotten one of those Huztl Farm and Tech 52 millimeter top ends. And a lot of guys, they blew right up, but this one here didn't. I think I did that 2014, maybe 15. So it's got a couple of years on it, and it's that time. You know, it wasn't an easy life for this saw. I ran it. But what I want to do is I want to put a 28-inch bar on this saw. Just try it. See if it'll pull a 28. This is one of those new Husqvarna X Toughs. I got a couple of these and I like them. I really do. I noticed that for a solid bar, I haven't put a scale on them, but I know for a solid bar they're not as heavy as I would have expected. And like I said before, they've got that more robust sprocket in the tip. And I just want to try them. Alright, let's see if we can get old Cyclops to fire up. Had it fired up in the shop, but that really doesn't mean much, does it? I got a big one over here. Let me see if I can get that one. So part of what it is I don't want to block in other trees, you know? So when I'm looking over past that tree to see if there's any more. Most of them are off to my right up that way. By far, most of them are down in there. There's a few down there, but it's going to take a lot of cutting to get down in there. But that one's sitting right there, so it's a big tree, so maybe I should take that one. Now we got a lot of snags to take out of here first. So let me start trying to get some of those out of the way. Yeah, I don't know if that Huztl is X tough. I think it's tough right now. I think X is like past tense, you know? Now the trick is to see if I can get it out of the woods without having to cut half of it off. Let's see. I'm not sure you're going to be able to see anything. But that was a struggle. Get that one up and out. Spent most of the late afternoon just on one log. I guess it's not really fair because I had to get the road sorted out a little bit better as well. But, well, I'll tell you what, that's a nice looking chunk of wood right there. Got it unhitched and you can see the sun's about down.